The National Education Policy 2020 marks a bold shift in how we think about technology in learning. It envisions a future where students build not just digital literacy, but also computational thinking and AI fluency, and where teachers are empowered with the tools, training, and support to integrate AI into their curriculums meaningfully and responsibly. From intelligent assessments that offer real-time feedback to enhanced lesson planning, the potential of AI to transform education is immense. But so is the responsibility to ensure that this transformation is ethical, inclusive, and human-centered. At the heart of this vision is the idea that AI literacy is not just the technical know-how, it's a civic and equity imperative. And who better to help us unpack this than one of India's foremost voices in the field? Joining us today on this edition of Edge Talks is Professor Balaraman Ravindran, one of India's top AI researchers and a big reason why IIT Madras is seen as a leader in both cutting-edge and responsible AI. It is indeed my pleasure to welcome you all to the AI Samarth Conclave. And it is a greater pleasure to welcome Professor Ravindran, one of India's top AI researchers, and a big reason, frankly, why IIT Madras is seen as a leader in both cutting edge as well as ethical AI. He heads 4 key AI centers at IIT Madras and has written over 100 research papers in some of the world's most respected AI conferences. Interesting, but one of his former students is Arvind Srinivas, who went on to co-found Perplexity AI, showing how his mentorship has shaped some of the most exciting AI leaders we have in the world today. And it doesn't end here. Professor Ravindran's PhD advisor was none other than Andrew Barto, who won the Turing Award, which is the equivalent of the Nobel in computing, for his foundational work in reinforcement learning. Thank you, sir, for being with us.
Thank you.
Given we have such deep expertise sitting on stage, I will keep my questions and summarizations as brief as possible. So, sir, we have in this room today, many passionate leaders in school education who have been working relentlessly to ensure that every child is learning. Many here are beginning to see in school education, the promise that AI has to actually address some of the wicked problems in education. And Abhishek sir referred to some of that, right? Whether it is personalizing learning journeys, supporting teachers with content generation, lesson planning, or providing for quicker assessments. But when we bring this conversation into the context of India's public school system, we often hit a roadblock. The perception that building and using AI, especially Gen AI, is simply too expensive and out of reach for government classrooms. So, sir, I have 2 questions for you. First, what do you estimate is the annual cost per child for running and maintaining AI-powered learning tools at scale? And I'm being very specific here, sir. And the second is that what are the most realistic, cost-effective pathways to make AI in education truly accessible and scalable in the public school system?
Sure. So thank you, Gouri, for the very generous introduction. I hope people didn't notice that she said something good about my student and about my teacher. So I still have to get up there. So, so to answer this question, so there are 2 parts to the question. So the first thing was about building an AI that's usable at school. The second thing is about operating it, right? So one way to think about it is to say that, hey, we really don't have to build AI. I shouldn't be saying this when Abhishek is sitting here, but one way of thinking about it, one way of thinking about it is that we don't have to really build the AI. We can just use what is out there, and we have to make sure that we are able to provide an appropriate access to the students. And we have been doing this between CSF and IT, and we have been doing this back of envelope computation. So if you want to adopt some of even the lower end, cheaper commercially available models that are out there, we can still provide something that is reasonable. I mean, at least to give an exposure of what is Gen AI to the students, at around maybe 120 rupees per student per year. So, I mean, this is including things like you were asking us earlier about data and communication costs, including all of this. Accounting for all of that, we can provide something that's at that level, right? But then to truly scale this up, I think we need to invest in our own infrastructure. So there are a couple of reasons for this. One, um, it's not clear, right? Whether students at the school level should be given exposure to an AI that is at the same level of capabilities as a ChatGPT or a GPT-4o, whatever it is, right? So we don't really want them to interact with an AI that's kind of taking away all the critical reasoning and other abilities, right? So what we should be looking to is build a reasonably capable AI model with which the students can do a lot of learning, a lot of research, and so on and so forth. But it still is something that helps them learn better, right? And they get a flavor of using these AI models. Right? And so we again did some work at the Center for Responsible AI, and as well as with discussions with CSF. It looks like maybe like a 14 billion parameter model, right? Or something slightly larger than that, which is significantly capable, can be built from scratch in India, right? And housed here, and allow for the students to have at least an hour of interaction with this AI model, right? And we can do it if you do it at scale, right? If you're going to start serving like a couple of million students, right? If you start looking at that scale, we can possibly do this at maybe about 25, 30 rupees per student. Yeah, so I think, but we have to invest significantly upfront, right? We have to invest, uh, 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 um, I don't know, maybe 13, 14 crores of rupees to build these models upfront, right? And of course, there'll be running costs, operating costs, and everything. So putting all of these together, right? I'm saying including the model building costs, we can do something that is more reasonable. But we have to make a commitment. We have to say that okay, we will build this and we will maintain this infrastructure as long as we are not getting into commercial considerations, right? This is something that can break even and can certainly provide students with a significant exposure to AI, which will prepare them to go out and use the tools that they will face in a more responsible, more effective manner. And I think we should do that, right? I think that's something important. So here's a question you didn't ask, but I'm going to answer that. We've been talking about Gen AI models, right? We've been talking about ChatGPT and so on and so forth. As an AI researcher, as a problem solver, that who wants to use AI to solve real problems, Gen AI is not always the answer. Right? There are so much techniques that we have developed, in the last 60, 70 years when AI has developed as a technology. So we have a lot of techniques. So as the students go out, when they start building solutions for this, right, they have to be exposed to a wider range of technologies. But at the school level, where we are talking about now, the students really need to know more about what is it that they are seeing around them. Right? What they are seeing around them is not, even if I mention this, most of you will draw a blank. An XG boost. Most of you are drawing a blank on when I say XG boost. And when I tell you 80% of deployed, predictive modeling AI solutions in the world use XG boost as a technology. They don't use OpenAI. They don't use ChatGPT. They use XG boost. Most of the models, AI models that are in production, use this. It's a much, much simpler idea, right? But that is not what students are going to ask you about. Students are going to ask you about, okay, what ChatGPT? Look, this is there. I mean, WhatsApp, right? You open WhatsApp, you have Meta AI sitting there. So everybody is getting exposed to these LLM. So we really need to tell them about these. So we need to spend this infrastructure in this infrastructure and build up.
I think so. It's very encouraging, right? Whenever we used to think about AI costs, it just seemed to be prohibitive, right? But I'll just recap what you're saying. You're saying that if students at scale were to use AI every day for 1 hour a day, the maintenance costs will be about 25 rupees.
Development and maintenance.
Development and maintenance costs are about 25 rupees per child per year. Now that is seems to be doable, sir.
Scale wins.
Yes. Absolutely. So I will move on to the next question, which in some ways you alluded to even
Mhm.
in when you were talking, responding to the first one, which is that as we introduce AI into classrooms, there are two common concerns that come up, especially from educators and system leaders who are deeply committed to child development. The first is the belief that AI in education is just another passing tech trend, like digital whiteboards, that promises more than it delivers. And frankly, given how new tools are introduced and how quickly they fade away, it is understandable that there's skepticism about whether AI will ever go a different way. The second fear is that AI might reduce children's creativity. That if students start relying too much on AI to solve problems, generate ideas, it may just make them passive or dependent rather than original thinkers. Right? So, again, wanted your take on these two themes. What would you say to education leaders who worry that AI in classrooms is just the latest tech trend, here today, gone tomorrow? And how do you see AI being used in ways that enhance creativity and critical thinking rather than replacing it? And this is especially in the context of school education.
Sure. So I'm going to make something a little provocative, right? I'm going to say something a little provocative. Um, so education, as we know it, is over. We haven't realized it yet, right? So if you just going to continue to teach the conventional way, teach the conventional tools, and the students are going to go outside the classrooms and have exposure to these AI technologies, right? They are not going to learn anything, right? They're just going to call this AI things and then just going to cut and paste. As seeing some of in the video, just cut and paste it without even understanding what is coming out of that, right? So we really have to seriously rethink, right? What is it that we're going to teach people, right? So how are we going to teach it? Are we going to, in fact, I was reading this article recently. Somebody in one of the Ivy League schools in the US is complaining how the evaluation policies have been reinforced in their classrooms, so that she feels that all they are doing is grading the ability of the students to use ChatGPT, not grading them on what they have understood. So, i- i- whether whether you accept it or not, AI is really going to change the way we learn, right? In the positive way or in a negative way is up to us. So we have to seize the moment and make sure that we do this in a positive manner, right? So it is not like we have had this is the first technology that is going to take away what was thought to be a critical aspect of learning earlier, right? So, there are a bunch of other examples I can give, but the one that's immediately relatable is the calculator, right? So, calculators do all arithmetic for us, right? So, even if we want to do some simple, verifying a food bill nowadays, we pull out our phone and start using a calculator. But even I could do more complex arithmetic when I was a kid. And now that those skills are atrophying because I'm relying so much on the calculator, right? But then we still have an understanding that basic arithmetic is needed. It is a very fundamental part of the curriculum, so we are still ensuring that kids at some level don't have access to calculator, right? And then we are teaching them basic arithmetic, so like that, right? We have to ensure that we don't abandon, right? We keep teaching it in the current pathways, right? So we possibly not teach them the right skills. This is going back to your second question, right? Are the skills, critical thinking skills, going to atrophy? So when the students are building these skills, right, so make sure that they have limited access to this, right? There has to be obviously a collaborative thing, so the parents and teachers and overall the entire ecosystem should push for this, right? But then we really have to go back and think about, okay, what should be the restrictions that I should have at different points in the curriculum when I'm teaching various things, and when can the student have access to Gen AI model? What kind of Gen AI model should you have access to? For example, even today, right? So you have when you're doing gate papers, you have access to that calculator on a screen, right? But you don't have access to a scientific calculator. So like that. So can I give you access to a language model like a Gen AI tool that will help you, craft your sentences better, but not do research, or something that allows you to do research better, but basically becomes a better search engine, but doesn't really do the reasoning and writing of the output for you and things like. So we'll have to start thinking about what kind of tools that we'll have to give exposure to these students. And and I think, yeah, I mean, indiscriminate use of tools even before the skills are appropriately formed can stop the skills from being formed, right? So
Now that makes sense. And I think, sir, it moves us to the next topic, which is the topic of the day around AI literacy, right? And I just want to refer to a common belief, right, that AI literacy is only for coders and STEM students, right? The perception not only narrows the scope of who engages with AI, but also risks excluding significant groups, particularly girls, right? So, an interesting data point is that in India, while women constitute about 43% of the STEM graduates, they represent only 14% of the STEM workforce. So, can you help us debunk this myth, right? Why is AI literacy essential for all learners? And how can we design AI literacy programs that are inclusive and relevant to every student, not just those in technical streams?
sure. So I think when Mr. Abhishek was talking, he was alluding to this, right? So it's not just people in STEM, but people from, well, medicine is STEM, I guess, but people from medicine, and then people from law schools are asking us, hey, why are you excluding us from this? So it's not certainly something not limited to STEM, right? So let's step back. So when we talk about AI literacy, I would like to think of multiple gradations of it, right? There should be something like an AI awareness, right? So what is AI? Where is it used around you and things like that, right? And then there should be some kind of a what I call as AI skilling, where you learn how to do things better using AI, right? And then finally you have some kind of an AI mastery or AI excellence or whatever. That's where actually the IT folks, the people who are doing AI development, right? That's where they should get into. But AI awareness is something that should reach 100% of the population, because each and everything that you are doing, right, is going to have something at the back end, right, that's going to use AI, right? And if soon enough everybody is going to be interacting with AI more than they will. I mean, in fact, some kids have already started doing that. They talk to AI more than they talk to human beings, right? So that's going to keep increasing. In fact, I didn't realize that. I very recently saw the statistics that Mark Zuckerberg apparently said that most uh, people that they did some survey, and he said most people seem to have on an average 3 friends, but psychologically, people should have at least 15 friends on an average, right? So we are going to create, the other 12 friends are going to come from AI models that we create. I mean, if that's the kind of attitude that people are going to push on the future social structure, right? So people really need to know, right? They need to know that a Gen AI tool is going to agree with you everything you say, right? In fact, they have been trained to please you more than be critical of you, right now. So they need to have that kind of an awareness. They also need to know about things like different kinds of biases that are there, what are the blind spots of these models, and what they cannot do, what you can use them effectively for, and all of these. So the AI awareness is certainly something that is important for everybody, because that's how you're going to get to use these tools more effectively, right? Like generally, right? And then coming to AI skilling, right? So almost every job is going to require AI. I mean, you can't think of doing most modern tasks, right, without using a computer, right? Or forget without using a office suite, right? Whether it comes from Google or IBM or Microsoft, doesn't matter. So all of us use office suite at some point, right? Now AI is going to be something that's going to even go beyond IT. I mean, the people in the agriculture, right? The farmers are going to use AI tools to figure out how to plant the next crop, and what kind of value things are going to come in the market, and so on and so forth. So everybody is going to start using AI to do their jobs better, right? And so you need to understand how you don't have to understand what AI does. You don't have to understand what is a large language model, or what is a foundation model, etc. But you really need to understand what tools are available in your domain, right? So that you can use AI more effectively to solve problems in your domain, right? Or even just even routine functions in your domain. So we have been thinking about a variety of questions like how would AI affect jobs, right? So it turns out that most jobs, right, have multiple skills that a person who's performing the job has to bring, and not all skills are easily, or automatable by AI, right? So some of these can become easily replaced with AI, but not others, right? So you need to know which of these you can do better with AI. So those kinds of skilling needs to happen. You don't need to know what the AI is, but you need to know how to use it better. So I think it's important for everybody to know AI at some level. So whether it is at the basic awareness level, or at some kind of a skilling level, or some finally expertise, which are the people who have to build this out, right? And you also asked about women, right? I think it's more important, not just in AI, right, in generally, in when we talk about building tech, to be more inclusive, right? So there is a lot of these issues, and even in olden day AI. So, my God, I'm talking about the AI that were like 15 years old as olden day AI, but even recent as 15 years ago, right? So AI models used to have a lot of biases in them because people did not quite figure out these biases were getting fed into them because of the data that they were being trained on, right? And so these models had went into deployment. These people started using it when these biases were flagged, right? So one popular thing was a company that started using AI for doing their hiring, and then it found out that women were suddenly not being hired at all because the company already had a significant bias against hiring women. But just to be okay on the surface, they used to hire a woman occasionally, but the AI had nothing, like no compulsions like that, right? It basically said, okay, the past, okay, you are very reluctant to hire women, I'll not hire any women anymore, right? Now, if enough women had been involved in the development of the AI system, they would have known to test it, right? That, hey, we have to make sure it's not, being biased. So I think you need to be a lot more inclusive when you're doing these AI building and things like that. Of course, and people are going to use AI everywhere, right? So even if you think that there are more women nurses than male nurses, but nurses are going to use AI. So then, babe, you better make sure that they know how to use AI well. It doesn't matter where you come from. I think everybody needs to be included in the AI journey.
Absolutely. And it's funny because typically in our CSF conferences, right, we never struggle with with gender issues on panels. This was the first
School
one where
school
we were
teachers are overwhelmingly women. So
yeah. But so very interestingly, this was the first conference where we said, "Oh, we don't have as many women on our panels as we would like." So it's it talks in some ways to the gender issues. So this is my last question for you. I think one of the often quoted statements is that AI literacy isn't a priority for children from low income communities, and that we should first fix the basics before introducing something as advanced as AI. But this assumes that AI is a distant or optional concern, right? But in reality, children across backgrounds are using AI, whether it is, through recommendations that they get or through chatbots, etc. So my question to you, sir, is how do we bust this myth and build a strong case for AI literacy as an equity issue rather than a future skills agenda? And what should we keep in mind to make AI literacy truly meaningful and accessible for all learners from underserved communities?
I mean, again, going back, we have already been talking about this. Such AI is going to affect at every level. In fact, I was giving this example earlier. That say you take a gig worker, they're typically coming from low income sectors, right? Now, the gig worker's livelihood is actually being determined by an AI algorithm now, right? So the AI decides who is going to go pick up, who is close by, who can have the least delay in picking up the food and delivering something, and etc. etc. So a lot of these job assignments and things like that are being done by. So they have to understand what is going on, right? So even if you say that for these people it is not a priority, no, it is, because their livelihood, their lifestyle, everything going forward is going to be determined by some aspect or the other of AI, right? And I think it's important, and it's not a question of a luxury, right? It's you said equity, but I also say it's something that will empower them, right? So I'll give you an example. So there is this organization called Karya. So, but we doesn't have to be Karya. So it turns out that a lot of AI that we still have to develop for India needs data, right? I mean, so we don't have enough Indian data. So contrary to whatever the government would say, we don't have enough Indian language resources, right? We don't have enough digitized text in most languages in India. And it turns out that we keep talking about 22 scheduled languages, but Google did a study and they figured out something like there are 800 languages that have at least a million speakers, right? So it's not like India has a dearth of languages, but we have a dearth of language data, right? So one way to get this data is basically go to the to rural areas, right, and get women particularly there to generate this data, right? But then you can truly empower the women by having a structure, having an infrastructure where you can track how this data is being used and make sure that the women get a small fraction of the money that is generated by the data, the wealth that is generated by the data, feed back to them. So Karya has done this. So women actually record snippets of audio. They read out various passages, and that audio is recorded, and then they create a data set out of it. And if there is anybody who's using the data set to build a model, they track it, right? So they get like 0.001% of whatever query that's sent to the model actually goes back to the women. And surprisingly, women who participate, who are active in this network, can earn up to some 200 to $250 a month. Right? So I don't. Well, this is old numbers. I don't have the current numbers with me, but these are things that can be certainly empowering. But the people had to know, right? So what is it? So they are actually trained in what is the right way to record this. What are the mistakes you shouldn't make? How should you annotate the data after you're recording it, and so on. So for some amount of data literacy is given to them, and then they are able to use that to actually earn a significant amounts of money, right? And this is just one example. This should be replicated and also across the country. So we should be doing this so that we can build better Indian models. But that's one part of it. The point here was, uh, even in low income communities, knowing about AI and being aware of what is the things that AI brings to the table, right, allows people to explore different ways to make a livelihood and so on and so forth. It's actually empowering. It's not just a question of making sure everybody has access to the right services, but it's a lot more than that. I think we should certainly push for it. And in terms of you know curriculum, I think we should ground the curriculum. I had this mm, example from somebody who's teaching object oriented programming for people who know this. So the example typically they use is that, hey, you have something called a pizza, right? You can put cheese on top of it, then it becomes cheese pizza. You can put something else on top of it. You can take a cheese pizza and you can make it into a different pizza, but it will still have the properties of pizza and so on and so forth. So people actually kind of describe this concept using pizzas. Most textbooks describes this using pizzas, right? But then these guys wanted to record this lectures in Tamil, right? And so they basically converted pizza into dosa. They said you can make a dosa, you can put onion on it, you can put masala in it, you can put. So basically, they kind of grounded it in that in their cultural context, right? So like that. So I think when we talk about building AI, we have to not just tell them about AI can do X Y Z in the Western context. We have to tell them, hey, look, in your context, right? How can you use AI? What is AI going to give you? That will ignite their thoughts and make them go and do interesting stuff, right? And so this is again a slightly provocative statement. So we do a lot of startups in India now. Everybody keeps talking about how India is starting so many startups. So if you look at many of the the people who are running behind these, right, they are all coming from cities, right? Mostly from urban populations, right? And they end up building startups that solve first world problems. So they end up going to the US to find their market, right? You empower kids from the rural areas, you empower kids in the LMIC communities, they're going to build startups that solve India's problems because they see it all around them, right? So people in the urban area see urban, like, first world problems around them. They don't see the Indian problems. I think, yeah, it's not just a question of empowering them, but also help us grow as a nation.
So, thank you, sir, for actually cutting through all the noise and giving us an idea of what AI can potentially do as a tool to empower our students, our educators, and our parents, and also for almost framing AI literacy as something which is required, needs to be inclusive, and available for all. Thank you, sir, for your time.
Thank you.
Do join us again next time for another exciting episode of Edge Talks as we meet with experts from across the education sector in India and abroad who are creating solutions to ensure better access to quality education for all children. We'd love to hear what you thought about this episode. Don't forget to leave your thoughts or suggestions in the comment section, and do like and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more such content.